Hello everyone. Welcome to your English class. In today's class, we are going to begin a new lesson. Children, tell me, which is the most interesting place you have visited? And how did you go there and return? Have you traveled by different means of transport? Is there a mode of transport that you would like to use? Children, before we answer those questions, tell me what are modes of transport? Modes or means of transport are different vehicles that let you move on land, air, as well as water. So when you want to travel from one place to another, you use different means of transport. Suppose you want to go to your school. Which mode of transport would you use? A train, I think. No, you would go to your school by an aeroplane. Definitely not, children. You would go to your school by a bus, a car, or any other means of transport that runs on the road. So we use different modes of transport depending upon the distance that we have to travel. If we have to travel nearby, we can conveniently use the road transport. But if we have to travel to distant places that are far, we need to use rail transport or air transport. Let's begin reading from the book. Mr. Phileas Fogg lays a bet with some of his friends to go around the world in 80 days. This is the story of how he travelled with his companion Passepartout. So this is the story about Mr. Phileas Fogg. He lays a bet with his friends that he would travel around the world in 80 days. And this is the story of how he travelled with his partner Passepartout. Let's read the story and find out how was his experience. That evening, they were on the train from San Francisco to New York, which was 3,786 miles away. In 7 days, the train would take them from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean. The train steamed through California at full speed. It crossed steep mountain slopes, deep canyons, and hair-raising curves, moving through a few tunnels and bridges. Suddenly, the train slowed down as a herd of buffaloes charged across the railway track. The train was forced to stop till the procession passed like a great brown river. The herd took a full 3 hours to cross the tracks. Night had fallen by the time the train could move again. Mr. Phileas Fogg and Passepartout, his companion, began their journey from San Francisco to New York. And the distance that they had to travel was 3,786 miles. Miles is nothing but a unit of distance. In 7 days, the train would take them from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean. So the train passed through California at full speed. It crossed steep mountains, deep canyons, and hair-raising curves. And then it also passed through a few tunnels and bridges. And then the train was moving very fast and suddenly it slowed down. Why did it slow down? Because a herd of buffaloes came near the railway track. And then the train was forced to stop. This herd of buffaloes took around 3 hours to cross the track, and by the time the train could move again, it was night already. Let's quickly have a look at the difficult words from this page. Miles, as I've already told you, is a unit of linear measure, which is equal to 1760 yards or 1.6 kilometer. The train steamed through. So steamed here means it moved using steam. Steep is a curve that is rising or falling sharply. Canyons are deep, narrow openings, usually with a stream. Hair-raising curves means very frightening turns. Tunnel, an artificial underground passage, especially one built through a hill or under a building, road, or river. Bridges, a structure carrying a road, path, railway, etc. across a river, road, or other obstacle. Herd is a large group of animals. It is a collective noun. And procession is a body of persons or animals walking together. Have a look at these pictures. This picture depicts hair-raising curves. This is a tunnel. This is a bridge. This is a canyon. This is a herd of buffaloes. Let's continue reading from the book. The train headed for the steep mountains. This was the most difficult part of the journey with its winding roads. They passed the highest point of their journey, 7,524 feet above sea level. In a few hours, they would be out of the Rocky Mountains. After the passengers had taken their breakfast, the train gave a shrill whistle and braked with a jerk and came to a halt. Passepartout, a French passenger, went to see what the matter was. There was nothing to be seen. The train had halted in the middle of nowhere. There was no station in sight. After the herd of buffaloes had crossed, the train again began to run, and the train headed towards the steep mountains. And this was the most difficult part of the journey, because the roads were not straight. They were like curls, just like the picture that I showed you. So they passed the highest point of their journey, which was 7,524 feet above sea level. And in a few hours they were out of the Rocky Mountains. After the passengers had taken their breakfast, the train whistled, braked with a jerk, and then again stopped. So Passepartout, who was a French passenger, he came out to find out what the matter was. So he could not find out anything. He could not see anything actually. The train had halted in the middle of nowhere. There was no station, nothing. So everyone wondered, why did the train stop in the middle of nowhere? The difficult words from this page are headed, move towards, winding roads, a twisting, indirect road. Shrill is a high-pitched voice. Jerk is a quick and sudden movement. Halt, come to an abrupt stop. Middle of nowhere, in a place that is far away from other people, houses, or cities. So the train had stopped in the middle of nowhere means the train had stopped somewhere in the outskirts. There was no population, no houses, and nothing could be seen around. He heard the signalman say, "The train can't go on. The bridge near Medicine Bow won't support the weight." It was a suspension bridge and some of its cables were broken. The driver of the train said, "Perhaps there is a chance of getting across the bridge by letting the train proceed at maximum speed." "All aboard," said the conductor. The passengers got on the train and the driver reversed the train for nearly a mile. Then he gave another whistle The train began to move forward so fast that it was frightening. The passengers had the feeling that the train was not resting on the tracks but was floating through air. As the engine shrieked and the train shuddered, they were over the bridge in a flash. So Passepartout, when he came out of the train to find out what the matter was, he actually heard the signalman saying that the train could not go. Why? Because there was a bridge on the way, which was broken. Some of the cables of the bridge were broken. It was a suspension bridge. Suspension bridge means it was hanging from the cables. It did not have any support from the ground. And so the driver of the train gave an idea. What was the idea, children? It was to move the train at the maximum speed. And therefore the bridge could be crossed only if the train proceeded at its maximum speed, that is the highest speed. Therefore the conductor asked everybody to sit on the train again, that is to board the train, and the passengers got on the train and the driver reversed the train for nearly a mile. And then he gave a whistle and the train began to run so fast that everybody was frightened. And it felt as if the train wasn't running on the tracks, rather it was floating through the air. And then the engine made a very loud sound. It shrieked and the train shook and they were over the bridge in a flash. In a moment, in a single moment, they could cross the bridge. As soon as they passed over the Medicine River, the bridge crashed down into the raging waters below. The train continued its course that evening without interruption. As the train moved forward the next day, it was suddenly attacked by hundreds of Sioux Indians, a tribe of native Red Indians. Many of them appeared from all sides, jumped on the moving train and pulled themselves up the steps. They were armed with rifles. Some of the travelers had revolvers. They defended themselves bravely by answering with pistol shots. So as soon as they passed over the Medicine River, the bridge crashed. The train continued without any interruption that evening. And as the train moved forward the next day, it was suddenly attacked by a tribe of native Red Indians, that is the Sioux Indians. And many of them appeared from all sides. They jumped onto the moving train and pulled themselves up the steps, and they could enter the train easily. They were all armed. They had rifles. Some of the travelers also had revolvers, and therefore they defended themselves easily. All of them shot with pistols at each other. The difficult words from this page are suspension bridge, a bridge in which the weight of the deck is supported by vertical cables suspended from further cables that run between the towers. Proceed is to move forward. Aboard is on or into the train. Conductor is a person who collects fares and sells tickets. He is the in charge, basically. Floating is suspended in air. Shrieked is to utter a high-pitched, piercing sound. Shuddered is to shake or vibrate violently. Raging is showing anger. Interruption is a stoppage of activity for some time. Rifles, revolvers and pistol, they are all types of guns. And defended means to protect from harm or danger. Let's see what happened next. The conductor cried out, "The train must be stopped or we are lost." "I will go," said Passepartout. He opened a door and unseen, by the Red Indians, he slipped under the racing train, and holding on to the chains, he slowly reached the engine. Then he separated the engine from the coaches. They started to slow down. They had neared a station where soldiers, attracted by the sound of shots, hurried towards the train. The conductor was worried, and he said that the train must be stopped, otherwise they would all lose the way. Then Passepartout said that, okay, I'll go out, and he opened the door and he somehow escaped to be caught by the Red Indians, and he slipped under the racing train. He held on to the chains and he slowly reached the engine. And he was a smart fellow. What did he do? He separated the engine from the coaches, and then they started to slow down. And by this time they had come close to a station where soldiers were waiting. The soldiers actually heard the gunshots, and therefore they hurried towards the train. They quickly came towards the train. The Red Indians on the train saw them, and they quickly jumped off before the train stopped entirely. The difficult words here are coach, a railway carriage. Hurried is moved quickly, and entirely is completely. So this was the experience that Mr. Phileas Fogg and Passepartout had on their journey around the world. Thankfully, they were not harmed, they were saved. But wasn't it very adventurous, children? It was indeed. That's all for now, children. I hope you have understood the lesson well. Read the lesson once again along with the meaning of the difficult words, and I'm sure you will have no doubts. I'll see you in the next class, children. Bye-bye.